Hello, sewing friends. Thanks for visiting the TurboPurr channel, where we love the sound of smooth running sewing and crafting machines. My name is Ramona, and today I will be talking about setting up a card ministry and ideas for thoughtful and meaningful cards. This video is inspired by my friend and mentor, Julena. Julena was a close friend of mine. She was on this earth for 70 years, and it wasn't long enough. She is missed by many friends and family left behind, and she and I had common interests that brought us together in dance and sewing and crafting. Julena made birthday cards, anniversary cards, and beautiful Christmas cards with personalized newsletters in them. All her cards were personalized, and she printed them out with her computer on cardstock, and every year I looked so forward to receiving her letter um, and just having a wonderful time with her. A very special person and very much missed. Once when we were talking, she mentioned her card ministry. And I thought that was such a beautiful way to describe how meaningful it is when you are thoughtful and give your friends and family meaningful cards that are comforting when they're having trouble and celebrating when there's happy times. I just thought it was really nice. So, this episode is dedicated to the memory of my friend Julena, and I'm going to talk about a card ministry. An easy way to start is just by using purchase greeting cards or blank cards. The cards that are shown in this photo are ones that I received from a nonprofit that was looking for a donation, but I thought they were pretty. So I've actually been using them when I need to write a personal note or something. And that's a good place to start, is just by using these types of blank cards. A bigger question that often comes is where to find good messages, because for things like celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, the messages come easily. Sometimes when you have friends and family who've had difficult health diagnosis or going through some really tough times, it's a little bit harder to find appropriate messaging. There are free fonts, and I'll leave a link in the description box. One of my favorite sites for finding free fonts it's spelled dafont.com, dafont.com, and with many of those fonts, you can just create a simple message in really pretty lettering, like happy birthday, happy anniversary, whatever. Um, Other options are rubber stamps. I like to get rubber stamps from thrift stores. They're very nice, and often you can find things that say something like thinking of you. Um, Also, the craft stores have that kind of rubber stamp with simple sentiments. I have a Brother scan and cut machine, and the scan and cuts have many built-in lettering designs. The Celebrate design on the right on the green paper was drawn with the pen tool or a marker in the scan and cut. So that's one of the built-in ones that you can resize and use. That's very nice for the interior of cards. Another thing is just when you are writing a sentiment, you know, just having a comforting message from the heart. And to some people that comes very easily. To some people it doesn't. It really kind of depends on what the situation is. Sometimes if it's been, a situation where it's difficult to really know what to say, you can use a search engine um, to ask, what is an appropriate message for the situation, to comfort someone in a certain situation. And recently, AI uh, has been helpful for suggestions. I am a member of a local guild that's a nonprofit and was asked recently to develop a sentiment to print out on a postcard size sheet um, to accompany uh, donations that the guild was making for a charity to assist mothers in need. So there were various handmade items and quilts and bibs and things like that. Other things too that were created by hand and stitched on sewing machines and embroidery machines to donate to the mothers who were recipients of this nonprofit. So the guild wanted to enclose a brief note of support um, that would go with the donations and received by the moms about uh, the um, about the gift. And so I used AI as a starting point because it was really kind of hard to know what to say to somebody in that situation. So I used Chat GPT as a starting point only. And I also used a search engine and did a whole lot of editing to come up with this paragraph appropriate to accompany a handmade gift that's being sent to a recipient whom you don't know personally. And the charity or the guild's logo was on the top of this, and I left space so that the giver in could sign her name to it. So this is just one example. For making personalized cards from scratch, there are just many different ideas that you can use. Many of my friends use custom printed photo postcards that you can get from the big box stores. The year-end newsletters are something you don't see people do as often, but those can just be printed on using your software, a few photos, and some clip art on a standard printer. I like to have a sticker on the back of the cards that I make. I usually just have my initial on them. And I also like to use an envelope flap, a sticker on the back of the envelope flap. I'm just finding that a lot of the envelopes now don't have enough stickiness on them, and so I have to reinforce them with tape, or a sticker looks a little bit better than tape does just to keep the envelope closed while it's going through the mail. Almost all of my cards are overweight because they're handmade and they have several layers of paper decorations in them. So one thing I would say is definitely to consider whether you need extra postage. If you're hand delivering it to a recipient, then that's not an issue. But when you're putting them through the mail, please be aware that with the handmade cards with several layers, um, many times you do need to have additional postage. These are the supplies that I generally use. As I mentioned before, I use the Brother Scan and Cut machine. Um, Many people have the Cricut machines, which are really great. And with the Floriani software that I have, I convert the free Cricut designs that I find from Jennifer Maker and others. When I want to use those, I convert them to the Scan and Cut and use my Scan and Cut to cut them out. But there are certainly many different types of machines that you can use, and there's certainly always the option of just cutting them with other with scissors and such if they're simpler designs. Here's some examples of personalized cards that I have made. In the background, I have just the top of a newsletter that I did. And when I am mailing my newsletters with my cards at the beginning of December, since all my cards are overweight, I just take all my cards to the post office at once and have them all weighed so that I can have the correct amount of postage put on everything. So that simplifies things. The road trip card on the left was made for a friend who was moving away, and so she was taking a road trip. This road trip lettering is built into the Scan and Cut machine. I have the 330DX model, and I printed or I cut this out of the adhesive sticky vinyl, and then the decorative paper is just a paper that I got from a big box store that looks like a map, and so I put that on the front, and then when you open it there's a little pop-up in it. The I'm showing in the middle an interior pop-up that I created for the inside of a card. And on the right, the fairy is also a built-in design that's in the Scan and Cut 330DX model. I used a decorative foiled paper in the background of this card, and on the front is actually an iron-on type of a vinyl which has a little bit of a thickness to it. So this was just kind of an experiment, and it did work. It did adhere well to the card. I always do multiples when I make a card in case the first one doesn't come out if something goes wrong. Um, and I like to do some experimentation. It's just paper, so if it doesn't work out, just make sure you have some extra. For the personalized paper cards, I've found that it's best to stick with standard sizes of supplies just in order to make sure you have the correct size envelopes handy. I generally use the A7 size of cards. These are 5x7 cards. Um, and here, I have bought the matching envelopes separately. Um, you can buy the cards that already have a pre-cut window in them, such as if you are going to do an embroidery or a handcraft or a needlepoint design of some sort and you want to just make it 5x7 and then slip it into the front of the card. Those are handy. The card sleeves are clear, and those are to put around your card. They're like a kind of like a just kind of like a clear plastic sleeve, and you put your card in them if you have a card that might be delicate or damaged somehow when it's going through the mail, and then you stick it into the larger white envelope, that's the mailing envelope. So it's just kind of an extra layer of protection if you're doing a fancy card. And I got these at a Michael's craft store. I'm going to be showing you some examples of mixed media used in cards and just listing some of the supplies that I used in them. So on the left is a card. It was a pre-made card and it had a window in it for adding your own embellishment. I used a blue fabric with a rubbing plate and a Shiva oil paint stick. To rub across and to create that copper design. It's a metallic copper design on top of the blue fabric. The middle card was made for a family member who loves antique cars, and I have an antique car rubber stamp, and I had an embossing stamp and use that on the rubber stamp and then sprinkled embossing um, embossing powder over the stamps on the cars, and then used a Heidi Swap heat tool to heat to heat the embossing powder and melt it so that it sticks in place. The happy birthday sentiment is done with a rubber stamp on a decorative paper, and I had a glitter decorative cardstock that I cut with a scan and cut to make the little outside border around the sentiment. On the right is I used Ranger Perfect Pearls powder and with a design that I had, and with this type of a design, I use the scan and cut with the special pen for the Perfect Pearls to draw this design on the cardstock, and then the Perfect Pearls powder is sprinkled on or used with a brush to brush over it, and it sticks to the pen, the area that the pen has drawn, and then the rest of the powder is gently wiped away and brushed away. The Perfect Pearls in these colors looks best against a dark background. A light color background doesn't have sufficient contrast, so it was recommended to me using a dark background, so that's what I did. And to finish the front of this card, I used a satin ribbon and a iron-on crystal. I like to close the envelope flaps with stickers, as I mentioned, and often on the back of my cards, I like to just put my initial. So I made the initial with the design with my scan and cut using the pen tool and just the cutting tool on a gold foil type of sticky paper. And with the stickers that are on the right, the scan and cut has a sticker kit that's available, and I purchased that and printed out stickers on my printer. I saved the stickers to a PDF format, and then I print the stickers onto printable vinyl, sticky back vinyl with the printer, and so those stickers are for the backs of the envelopes. Embroidered cards are something I really love. If you have an embroidery machine, you already have built-in designs into your machine, and there's different ways to attach these. The card on the right is an OESD embroidery design, and I will leave a link with that in the description. And the card on the left is a simpler card with less layers. I prefer, when I'm making cards, to not stitch directly on paper. Most of the time, I use a stiff stabilizer and a fabric, and then select a design that's in my machine. There are many, many holiday designs that fit within a 5x7 hoop, which is a really good size for a card that can be stitched out. Then after I'm done with the embroidery, I trim off I trim the fabric to the correct size. And in this example on the left, I used an applique stitch all the way around to connect the embroidery to the front of the card. Many times what I like to do is to just use a piece of separate cardstock that's trimmed to about the 5x7 size, and then just attach the embroidery to that piece of cardstock, and then double-sided tape the piece of cardstock to the base card. By not embroidering directly on top of the cardstock, there are no bobbin threads that are showing inside the card. Some people do embroider directly on the cardstock. In that case, you could always just take a piece of decorative paper and double-sided tape it or glue it to the inside of the card to cover the bobbin threads. With the card on the right, I used a green and white striped foil cardstock, and because the design wasn't very heavy, was an open design with the stars and the swirls, I embroidered directly on that piece of cardstock. And then the green Christmas tree is a piece of flocked vinyl. The lacy white tree was done in a separate hooping on wash away stabilizer, and then was put on top of, it was layered on top of the other pieces, and those little bright dots that look like Christmas tree ornaments are actually brads that you can buy at craft supply stores. That they're like little pegs that go through the layers and hold everything together. And with this, I did not embroider directly on the green base card. I embroidered on the green and white striped piece of card, and so after I was done putting everything together, the green and white striped piece was glued or double-sided taped to the background card, the green base card, so that way there's no bobbin stitches showing inside the card. In addition to any type of built-in holiday designs that may be in your machine, there are many decorative stitches in most of the machines. One of the things that you can do in order to get your lines straight is to use a purple air erasable pen for fabric and draw lines on cardstock. My experience is that those lines will disappear after a day or so, and they can be used to align your decorative stitches, or they can also be used to align rubber stamps. Like if you're using rubber stamps to stamp a greeting, you can use the purple air erasable pen for that. Colorful threads are also really nice for these projects. So basically, my embroidered greeting cards are done in layers. I use a paper card front, I have an embroidered layer, and then a um, paper frame or applique stitch. In the previous embroidery that I showed you with the dress form, I had it applique stitched, the embroidered layer applique stitched to the paper card front. Another option is to use your cutting machine to cut a narrow paper frame, such as maybe a 1/4 inch wide frame or a 1/2 inch wide frame, out of cardstock, and then using glue on the back of that to go over the embroidered layer, and that keeps any raw edges from showing if you are using any kind of a fabric that tends to ravel. I prefer to use that method with a paper frame to completely cover any kind of ravelly edges. Again, additional postage is something to definitely be aware of. I find, particularly with the cards that are embroidered, those nearly always require additional postage just because they're heavy. And also, depending on the width of the card, sometimes, if it can't be sent through the machines or whatever, there's an extra charge for hand stamping the postage. So that's just something to be aware of. I hope that this video has given you some ideas about starting a card ministry and just the connecting with friends and family in a really unique and special and supportive way. And I'd like to wish you a wonderful day and many warm wishes with your card making. Thank you for watching.